The sky that morning was clear, but in Hung's heart, a storm raged. He stood on the balcony of the wooden house, looking down at the village road where the police car had just driven away. His hands were clenched tightly, the veins in his arms visible beneath his sleeves. Inside the house, soft giggles could be heard. Han was playing with her baby brother again, safe, unharmed. But the scars inside her hadn't fully faded. And now, after all the fear, all the nights filled with dread, they knew who did it. The man with the scar. A former employee of Hung's company. Someone he once trusted. Someone who had once smiled at Tieu Han like an uncle. Someone who had helped carry her toys from the car just weeks before he disappeared. That betrayal cut deeper than any knife. A father's rage. When the chief of police delivered the news, Hung couldn't speak at first. Tuka sat beside him, gripping his hand tightly. "You're sure it was him?" Hung asked, voice low and cold. "We found the footage. We traced the call. He led the kidnapping. He told Han those lies. He wanted money. Revenge." Hung's heart thundered in his chest. This man had used his daughter as a weapon. Tuuka looked at him, her voice trembling. "What are you going to do, Hung?" Face to face, 2 days later, the police allowed Hung a private moment in the holding room. There, he was the man with the scar, sitting with shackles around his wrists, still trying to smile. Hung stepped inside slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't strike him. "I trusted you," Hung said. His voice was quiet, but each word struck like thunder. "You worked in my company. You ate at my table. My daughter looked up to you." The man shrugged. "You never knew what it felt like to lose everything. I wanted you to suffer. You tried to break me by hurting my child," Hung whispered. "That's not justice. That's cruelty." The man didn't respond. Hung leaned closer. "You don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm not here for revenge." That surprised him. Choosing a higher road. Hung stood tall, breathing deeply. "I could use everything I have to destroy you," he said. "And maybe you deserve it. But I won't. Not because I'm weak, but because I want my children to grow up in a home that teaches healing, not hate." He stepped back. "The law will do its job. That's enough for me." And with that, Hung turned and walked out. Outside, Tuku was waiting with Tieu Han in her arms. "Did you forgive him?" she asked. "No," Hung said, "but I let go. For us, for her." That night. Later, as the family sat under the stars, Tieu Han nestled between her parents. Her little voice asked, "Is the bad man gone?" "Yes, sweetheart," Tieu Han said softly. "He's not coming back. Did Daddy fight him?" Hung looked at his daughter and smiled gently. "No, Daddy didn't fight him. I chose to protect you instead." She looked confused. "But how?" "By staying with you," he whispered. "By choosing love." Final reflection. The man who harmed them had been exposed. And Hung could have chosen fury, vengeance, or power. But in the end, he chose something stronger. He chose peace. He chose to build, not break. He chose love not for the sake of the one who hurt them, but for the future of the ones he loved most. And in that choice, he gave his children a gift far greater than justice. He gave them a world without hatred. The days that followed were quiet. For the first time in weeks, the family woke up without fear. No more sirens. No more calls from the police station. The air around the house seemed lighter, the sunlight warmer, the birdsong sweeter. Tieu Han began to sleep through the night again. The dark circles under two circus eyes slowly faded. Hung, though still quiet at times, smiled more often, especially when watching his daughter help her baby brother hold a rattle or when Tieu rested her head on his shoulder after dinner. But none of them expected the knock at the door that came one late afternoon. An unexpected visitor. It was Mr. Peter Nyan Hung's father. Dressed in a simple gray sweater and jeans, he looked different, older, gentler, quieter. His usual air of distant authority was replaced by something softer. In his hand, he held a small wooden box. They sat in the living room. The children played nearby while the adults shared tea. For a while, the conversation was light updates about the business, the weather, how big the baby had grown. Then Peter set the box on the table and slid it toward Hung. "I've spent my life building companies," he began. "But I missed building something more important, understanding my own family." Hung opened the box slowly. Inside was a small photo of him as a child, sitting beside his own mother, who had died young. "I was raised with silence, with control. That's how I learned to survive. But when I heard that someone had hurt your daughter, my granddaughter," his voice cracked slightly, "I realized I can't keep pretending that emotions make us weak." Tusurka's eyes softened. Peter turned to her. "You've been stronger than anyone I know. You held this family together when everything could have fallen apart. And I want you to know, I see that now. I'm sorry for the distance. And I'm proud of you both." Hung swallowed hard. For the first time in his life, he saw something in his father's eyes that he never expected: humility. A step toward healing. That evening, Peter joined them at the dinner table. He helped Tieu Han tie her hair into 2 uneven ponytails, and even fed the baby his mashed banana in a gummy smile, and a bit of food on his collar. Laughter returned. Not the cautious kind, but real, full laughter. And later that night, as Hung walked his father to the guest room, Peter paused and said, "You made the right choice, son. Not just by letting the law handle that man, but by choosing peace over revenge. That takes strength." Hung nodded. "I learned from Tieu. She taught me how to love without fear." Peter smiled. "Then, you're both teaching me now." A new chapter begins. In the weeks that followed, things slowly transformed. Peter became a regular visitor, sometimes dropping by with fruit, other times with building plans for a treehouse for the children. Hung and Tieu finally registered their marriage officially. Tieu Han returned to school, walking in with confidence and a handmade bracelet from her father on her wrist. Life lesson. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is forgive. In life, we are often taught to fight for what's right, to stand strong against those who hurt us. But what no one tells us enough is this: sometimes, the bravest and most powerful thing we can ever do is to forgive. Hung had every reason to be angry. Someone had harmed his little girl. Someone had betrayed his trust. And the world would have justified his rage, even his revenge. But instead, he chose a different path, a harder, quieter one. He chose peace. Not because he was weak, not because he forgot, but because he understood something greater. Revenge might satisfy the moment, but only forgiveness brings lasting healing. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing the wrong. It doesn't mean forgetting the pain. It means refusing to let darkness grow deeper inside us. It means saying, "You will not have control over my future, my family, or my peace." In choosing forgiveness, Hung didn't just free the man who hurt him, he freed himself. This story also reminds us that healing isn't a solo journey. Sometimes, it takes the soft return of someone we never expected, like a father who had once been distant, showing up again not with judgment, but with humility. That too is healing. Growth happens when people choose love over pride, when silence is broken by truth, when old walls are replaced with honest conversations. In the end, we see that strength is not found in how tightly we hold on to our anger but in how courageously we let it go. So, let this story remind us. The heart that forgives becomes lighter, the home that forgives becomes warmer, and the soul that forgives becomes free. Forgiveness, once chosen, does not end in a single act. It continues in every quiet decision made afterward, to love without resentment, to speak without blame, to hold without fear. Hung did not simply forgive the man who hurt his daughter, he forgave the silence, the abandonment, the pain of not being understood. And in doing so, he made room for something else to enter: compassion. True healing, we learn, isn't just about what we overcome. It's about how we soften after we've been hardened. It's about how we rebuild what was nearly broken: our faith in love, in family, in ourselves. When Peter Han knocked on the door, he didn't just visit his son, he stepped into his own redemption. The man who once withheld emotion now offered warmth. The father who once seemed unreachable now offered respect and pride. That too is a lesson. It is never too late to change. It is never too late to show up. Children grow. Time moves forward. But the bonds we create or mend with the people we love can carry us far beyond the damage of the past. Forgiveness opens that door. It teaches the next generation that pain does not define us, that we can choose to respond with courage, not hatred, that the cycle can stop with us. Because when a family laughs again after tears, when a child feels safe again after fear, when a man finds peace after anger, that is not weakness. That is the strongest kind of victory. So let this be the lesson we carry in our hearts. Let go of what weighs you down, hold close what lifts you up, and never be afraid to choose the path that brings peace. Not just to your world, but to the hearts around you.